So whatever we're studying or meditating on or contemplating, it's important to generate our bodhicitta motivation and to see how what we're going to meditate or study relates to bodhicitta. Okay, so it's important to see how all the different aspects of the path, all the different virtuous minds that we need to cultivate, all come together in bodhicitta, which then motivates us to generate the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is what actually brings the realizations of the higher paths. So in this case, we're going to be learning about chapter 4 of Bodhicharyavatara, which deals very much with ethical conduct. And to see that ethical conduct is the basis for generating bodhicitta. And it's not that you generate ethical conduct, say, got that, been there, done that, now forget about it and let's go on and generate bodhicitta and wisdom. It's not like that, because pratimoksha precepts, that ethical conduct, relates to our study of the Four Truths. The Bodhisattva precepts relates to our study and practice of bodhicitta and wisdom. And the tantric precepts relate to that practice as well. So all throughout the path, there's an emphasis on ethical conduct. And so with an intention to learn ethical conduct well, in order to generate bodhicitta and the wisdom knowing reality, then we'll listen to the teachings this morning. So when you really think about ethical conduct, it's related to so many different topics on the path. In the division of the 3 higher trainings, ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom, ethical conduct is the first one. Yeah, so we have to get a good foundation in that to generate concentration. Now, you might say, well, why? I want to meditate and learn how to concentrate. Well, what interferes with our concentration? Okay, attachment, anger, restlessness, remorse. Okay, all of these things, if we look, relate to ethical conduct, because these are the mental factors that disturb our concentration are the same ones that motivate us to act unethically. Yeah. So when you see that connection, then you see really, if you want to work on concentration, you have to be able to calm your mind from those very gross afflictions that motivate the very gross non-virtues. Okay, and then as we practice more and more, understanding the subtler levels of afflictions and keeping the subtler levels of precepts, and then that aids our concentration. So we also see that ethical conduct is very much related to identifying the afflictions in our mind and learning the antidotes to those afflictions. Okay, so ethical conduct is not just about keeping rules. Yeah, it's not just about keeping rules. It's because to keep the guidelines and the precepts, we have to look at our mind, because the speech and the body don't operate unless the mind motivates them. Okay, so to keep good ethical conduct, we have to not only study what the afflictions are so that we know what they are, why they're non-virtuous, and how they function, but especially to be able to identify them in our own experience. Because we can know all about them and give a wonderful talk all about the precepts, or all about the afflictions. And then if we don't notice them in our own mind, then our behavior is cattywampus, right? Yeah. And we're just, crazy under the influence of the afflictions. But identifying what's virtuous and non-virtuous, knowing the afflictions, identifying them in our experience, that still isn't sufficient. We need to learn the counteracting forces and then apply them. Okay? So really to learn, what the counteracting force to each affliction, so when it arises, we know what to do. Yeah. And I'm always struck by people. I get many emails from people and asking for advice, and often the advice they're asking for is what to do in a certain situation or how to handle a certain problem. And I know that these people have heard the antidotes and the teachings, but they don't think when they have the problem, what is the affliction and what is the antidote to it? Yeah. And then even when we do remember the antidote, we expect to apply the antidote one time and then the affliction just goes away. Okay. And it's not like that. When you think that our afflictions have been around since beginningless time, we have a lot of habitual energy going in that direction. So, practicing the antidote once isn't going to go, whammo, there it goes. Yeah. But we have to have continual practice. That's why it's called practice. Yeah, practice it implies repetition, familiarization. Okay, so that's really important. So many of you, I've told you, about my experience of being the disciplinarian of the macho Italian monks and the spiritual coordinator for the Dharma Center at the same time. And after that, when I finally left and I went back to India, I went into retreat. And I was so angry. I had no idea before that experience living there that I had that much anger. And then it's like, there was like, I really saw my anger quite vividly. I went into retreat and it was a deity retreat, but I actually spent most of the retreat time trying to calm my anger. And I would notice, I would do a session, apply the antidotes, get myself kind of, okay. get up from the session. And then the moment I thought of my experience in Italy, I'd get angry again. And then in the next session, meditate on the antidotes. Get a little bit calmer. Get up from the session. Get angry again. Okay? And so I did this for 3 months. It was a 3-month retreat. Actually, maybe it might have even been longer. But, that's what you have to do. And it's not that after a 3-month retreat, then my anger was all gone, as you all know. Yeah, anger hangs around for a while, like a long while. So, we really have to put our energy into this. Okay? So that's one thing. Then, slightly different topic, but very related, is last time I talked about integrity and how important integrity and consideration for others are, and then conscientiousness, which is the mind that values ethical conduct. Okay, and I gave some examples from current events, because current events to me are current, and there it is right in front of your nose for you to deal with. So as you may know, we are in the middle of the second impeachment of Donald Trump, and just within they've had 2 days so far. Today is the third day. Okay. So we also know from the first day was about deciding whether it was constitutional to impeach him or not. And the evidence, produced by the House managers, it was very, very clear. They had all sorts of historical things to show that, yes, it's completely constitutional. Trump's lawyers didn't make a very good argument saying that it's not. Okay. So then you had 6 Republicans vote with the Democrats to say that it was constitutional. So those 6 went counter to the general feeling in their own party. So one was Liz Cheney, okay, Dick Cheney, former vice president's daughter, who's a senator from Wyoming. Liz Cheney, she's in the House, yes, but the House is when the House voted for, I'm sorry, she's a representative, she's not a senator. But anyway, she voted as part of the House vote on impeachment, in this way. And she still believes that it is constitutional. Ben Sasse, or Sasse, I'm not sure how his name is pronounced. He's from Nebraska, right. And he also, he's a senator, and he voted that way. Well, both of them got censored by the Republican parties in their own states. So Republicans censoring Republicans because they didn't like their vote. They wanted them to vote for acquitting Trump. And both of them, I personally differ a lot on political philosophy, ideas from them. But I respect both of them very, very much, especially Liz Cheney. She got hammered so badly in her state, by her state, and she didn't budge at all. She knew what's harmful, what's beneficial. She made her decision. And even though she knows that she could be primaried, she could be voted out of office, she stuck with what she knew was ethical. Regardless of the personal consequences she would have to experience. So I really admire that. The same thing from Ben Sass. I mean, his own Republican Party in Nebraska censored him and threatened to primary him and so on. And he still stuck up for it. So I think these are very good examples that we see in current events of people who are willing to sacrifice what benefits them personally or what benefits even their own, well, I don't know that it benefits their own party, but what their party thinks would benefit them, for the sake of the country, for the sake of the world. Yeah? And so this is the kind of inner strength that I think the Buddha wants us to have when we practice, And we know that it's hard very often to work against the afflictions and to keep the precepts well. And we can watch our mind sometimes invent all sorts of reasons why doing the opposite to the precept is actually virtuous, And, we can spin good stories for our own mind. And it's tough to combat the afflictions. But this is what, makes us have inner strength. And and it's the integrity and the consideration for others that, is behind that sustains that. Okay, so just to think about and see the examples of actual people doing it versus the example of people. There were a couple, or more than a couple, but just a few people, Republicans, yesterday when they were showing very vivid images, video of the assault on the Capitol, that people hadn't seen before because it was from the security cameras inside the Capitol. And one senator, Josh Hawley, was up in the gallery shuffling papers and reading things. Rand Paul was doodling. So they weren't listening. They weren't paying attention. Yeah. Other people had just said their mind was made up. And so although it was very forceful to them, emotional to them, they had decided before. Okay, now this is very contrary. They didn't take a vote yesterday, so they're not think sure. But this is very contrary. There was another senator that I really, really respect. And because they took a vote on Tuesday. He's a Republican senator, Senator Cassidy from Louisiana. He voted and said, yes, it was constitutional to try somebody who was no longer in office. They interviewed him and said, why did you do this? Because he's bucking his party, and he's subsequently gotten criticized for it. And he said, and this is what I really respect, he said, when I took the oath to be a senator and when I took the oath to be a juror for this trial, part of it was to be an impartial juror. And I took that seriously, that I need to be impartial. And one side presented a very good argument, saying it was constitutional. The other side, their argument was flimsy. So as an impartial jurist, I voted for the side whose argument was very strong. Yeah. So again, look, that somebody with really good, ethical conduct, who knows that when he goes to sleep at night, he can sleep peacefully because he kept the vow he took when he became a senator. Yeah. And so, this is pertaining to politicians, but we all have things in our lives that are analogous to this. So I find thinking of this, really helps me in my practice. Also thinking of the people during the Second World War who hid Jews, at their own risk. And how dangerous it was for them to do that. So, these people, ever since I was a kid, I've always looked at and thought, these are what real respectable people are, and wondered, could I do that in a situation with so much personal danger? I mean, in World War II, they would get killed if it was found out what they were doing. With the senators, they get censored, But, it's just something to think about and to build up our own internal courage and our courage to do what we know is right. Not to be brave on a battlefield, which I look at and I say, that's not creating virtue. We need to be brave in creating virtue. And Shantideva will point that out to us very vividly in some of the verses that we're coming to. So we finished verse 4 in chapter 4. Verse 24 in chapter 4. Too many fours. Okay. So, here he's in this section. We haven't completed that section, but Shantideva has been talking about the disadvantages of not being conscientious, and what happens, and lower rebirth, and how difficult it is once you're born in a lower rebirth to create the virtue needed to have an upper rebirth. And then even in this lifetime, how the disadvantages that come from not being conscientious. And then saying, when we have a precious human life, and it's taken us so long to create the causes and so much effort to create the causes for this opportunity we have right now, not to throw it away by just, following the instructions of the afflictions, because the afflictions, by and large, are directed towards the happiness of only this life. Yeah, the afflictions are so narrow. Yeah, and we think our life is long. We think, maybe you live. There's one nun who in Europe who just survived COVID, and today she turned 117 years old. 117, and she survived COVID. Okay, so we may think, wow, that's a long life. She's blind. She does her prayers every day. She's in a wheelchair. She keeps practicing. And Sister Andre is her name. So she, we may say that's a long life. But when you think of beginningless time, 117 years is nothing. And who says we're even going to make it until that? Okay, chances are we won't. We'll die much, younger than that. So why we have this opportunity to really try and take advantage of it and not waste all the energy that we put into creating the causes for this life in previous lives. Okay? So thinking like this involves a big shift in our worldview. Okay? And this is really key to being a Buddhist, is that we adopt a very different worldview. And this takes some time, depending on how entrenched we are in the view. And I'm just talking, just our general view on life, if we think of only this life or if we think of more than this life. Yeah. If we think only of this life, the Buddhist worldview doesn't make a lot of sense to us. And it becomes very difficult to practice because when we think only of this life, what is most important to us? The happiness of this life. Yeah. If you don't think about future lives, you're not going to consider your happiness in future lives. You're only going to think about, okay, I want to have a really good job in this life, and I want to work my way up and be famous and, well-known, well-respected in the field I work with. I want to have a lot of money. I want to have, people who love me and surround me with support and tell me how wonderful I am. I want to have fun and go travel and do all these things. And, sitting and working with my afflictions, that's difficult. That's hard. Why should I counteract my anger? My anger is justified because these people harm me. And any sane person would want to retaliate. My greed is good because my greed will get me what I want and make me happy. Yeah. Why should I give up being attached to things? Yeah. And the people I care about, they are really wonderful. They're much better than other people. My attachment to them is really good because they are really the most wonderful people. Okay? And that's how we think, and that's how the world thinks, And so the whole force of your upbringing, your family, your culture is telling you the happiness of this life, isn't it? And then you come to Buddhism and you're in this small group and there's somebody saying, check up if that's really true. And your first thing is, what is this person saying? They're telling me to give up everything I've lived my whole life for up until now. Why should I give this up? I was going in the right direction. I was successful. I was making money. I was getting promoted. I had this wonderful relationship. It was all going so well. And what are you talking about? Caring about future lives more than this life? Are you out of your mind? Okay. Isn't that true? Isn't that how you think when you first meet the Dharma? It's like, this is utter, craziness. And then, you say, well, but those people who are, Dalai Lama, he looks like a happy person. And he believes this kind of stuff, And you meet some of the other teachers and well, they believe this, and they don't look like unhappy, miserable people. And you know what? The people who I know who are working just for the happiness of this life, they have more problems than these people who think about future lives and who think about enlightenment. Because the people who, are just, involved in the happiness of this life, they're so worried about their reputation. They're so worried about not having enough money. And no matter how much money you make, you never have enough to feel completely secure. And they have so many relationship problems. Yeah. If you don't believe that people have relationship problems, just listen to your friends. and what they talk about. Yeah? And then you go, well, wait a minute, there's what I believe, where I've been acculturated and going, and then the evidence of what I'm seeing with my own eyes doesn't support what I've been taught and the direction I'm going in. So there's disharmony. It's like your nails on a blackboard when there used to be blackboards. Okay? I don't know if it works with whiteboards now. Yeah. So it's that thing of, there's like, what I want to work for the happiness of this life. And then but the people who work for other things, they look happier. And it's like, and you have an internal civil war. And then, if you keep going from there and you keep practicing, as they say, truth always wins out in the long run. And sometimes it's a long run. Sometimes it takes many lifetimes to get there. Yeah. But in the end, when you really spend the time thinking about this, it's like, oh, okay. Gotta shift directions here. And then, then you have to deal with all the attachment to the happiness of this life and all those afflictions that are pulling you to just think about, I want what I want when I want it. Yeah, which is our brand in samsara, isn't it? It's our samsaric brand. I want what I want when I want it. And the universe owes it to me. And I'm going to fight to get it. These days, all the politicians, everything, even people who aren't politicians, everybody is talking about fighting. All the activists, we're going to fight for this and fight for that. How about we're going to work towards that? Why does everything have to be a fight? Okay. Well, Shantideva, in some ways, he uses, as we'll see if I ever get to come to the verses, he uses the analogy of soldiers on the battlefield fighting. And that we have to fight with our afflictions. So I don't know if that is an analogy that appeals more to men. I don't know many women who like the analogy of being soldiers and fighting for things. I don't know. What do you think, guys?
I actually don't like the imagery of fighting. That always made me uncomfortable. When I first heard it, was I had to fight afflictions. I was like, wait, but I want to get rid of that tendency. Nowadays, it's more like a mother-child relationship. It's like to be gentle with myself.
But a mother is gentle, but she gets you doing what you need to do. Yeah. And even the women like the fighting analogy. You like it? Yeah, you like it? Okay, so a few of the women like it. Yeah, it's just always, you made me wonder about that. But anyway, whatever, oh, sorry, I forgot about you. Once you become ordained, you kind of lose your gender. So
yeah, I'm not real big on being hung up on gender actually, but I find it sad when I hear all these references to battle and stuff in the scriptures, not because I don't think they should be there, but just because it brings to mind how much most cultures have had this, and it's just part of samsara, and it's, it's just so sad that people have that attitude, hack each other up and stuff. And back then it was swords, but now it's, I got to have my guns.
Yeah. I think it's very, very sad. And, perhaps the sense, the reason it's used is to take something sad in samsara and as an analogy for something that, if done correctly, can be helpful in your practice. But if done incorrectly in your practice, you wind up beating yourself up. Like, oh, I have these afflictions, how bad I am. Do you want to?
Gentleman said, the analogy of the battle is helpful to me because I can generate strength and confidence based on it.
Okay. Yeah. So, people's minds work in different ways. So it's interesting to think about that. Okay? But it'll come up here. Okay, so let's get to verse 25. So again, talking about the disadvantages of following the afflictions and not being conscientious. Then, if my body blazes for a long time in the unbearable flames of hell, inevitably my mind will be tormented by the fires of unendurable remorse. So the body is in pain, and at that time, the person recognizes what are the causes of me being born here and experiencing this pain. And then they see, oh, it was my own actions, my own karma. I got myself into this mess. And then that's when the fires of unendurable remorse come. Okay. So like I was saying last week, I've always had this strong feeling of I don't want to die with remorse. Yeah. So as best as we can to keep on top of things. And we make mistakes, but if we learn from our mistakes, then at the time of death, we don't have remorse for them because we know that in the end, we use them for something good. Yeah. So I know when I first met the Dharma, I met the Dharma when I was 24 and ordained when I was 26. And I thought, oh my goodness, I wasted so many years, I had so much samsara behind me, my goodness. Samsara galore. And it's like, I just wasted that time. And I felt some remorse for it. But, after going back, and looking at everything that I did and why I did it and what the results it brought in this life and what the results it would bring in future lives, okay, then I actually began to, I had remorse for the negativities, but I didn't have regret that I had those experiences. Because having had those experiences showed me the disadvantages of following those afflictions and getting involved in that. And that, what I learned from going through all my samsara, actually, I think has helped me in my practice because now when certain afflictions come up, I go, boom. But I remember when I followed that galore, before I met the Dharma, it doesn't work. Drop it. Okay. And the same too with, suffering experiences. Like when I talk about what happened in Italy, I'm glad that happened now. Because if that didn't happen, I would never have recognized how much anger I had. And then I never would have, kind of studied chapter 6 of this book, which we will get to one day. And, so to be able to really learn from our mistakes and not stay stuck in, oh, I created so much negativity, how bad I am. Because that state of mind is of absolutely no benefit. Yeah.
Not only do do I have that the understanding that, you know, it's kind of like drinking salt water and then realizing it doesn't quench your thirst.
Yeah.
Not only do I have that aspect with that, but I also, when I see other people under the influence of those same emotions doing those things, I have more connection and understanding of them because I've done that. And so in that sense, I'm glad that I had those kind of experiences.
Yeah, because it stops us from judging those people and helps us to have compassion for them.
Yeah, and I have to have something to keep me from being judgmental because it comes up and then I go to that to counter it.
Yeah. Okay, 26. Having found by some coincidence this beneficial state that is so hard to find, if now, while able to discriminate, I once again am led into the hells, then, as though I were hypnotized by a spell, I shall reduce this mind to nothing. Even I do not know what is causing me this confusion. What is there dwelling inside me? Okay, so having found by some coincidence this beneficial state that is so hard to find, here we have this precious human life. Here we have all the incredible conditions, external conditions to be able to practice, internal conditions to be able to practice. And it's such a remarkable state that we live in that it seems like it happened by coincidence, because how in the world did somebody like me ever create the causes for this? You know? How could somebody as ignorant as I ever create these causes? So it's really got to be like a coincidence, you know? But of course it's not. Yeah. But we found this beneficial state so hard to find. So having that behind us, if now, while being able to discriminate between what is virtuous, what is non-virtuous, what benefits myself and others, what harms myself and others. Because benefiting and harming, it isn't a choice between it benefits, to benefit me, it's got to harm others. And if I benefit others, it's harming myself. But when we really understand karma, and when we have a bodhicitta motivation, we see that when we act in a non-virtuous way, we harm ourselves by sending ourselves to the lower realms. But we harm sentient beings in this life right now, and we harm them in the future by, in samsara, by perpetuating that habit of the affliction and by putting off our own awakening, you know, and big opportunity to help them. And then we see when we benefit others, we also benefit ourselves because we create good karma. We advance on the path. Okay, so it isn't a choice between, you know, well, if I'm going to benefit myself, then I gotta, when push comes to shove, I'm going to harm others. But when we really understand karma, that, you know, when we create virtue, it helps both ourselves and others. When we create non-virtue, it harms both ourselves and others. Yeah, it's not either or. So these kinds of things, you know, we need to really contemplate them over time, not just listen to teachings, but really think about it and make examples in our lives. And then that way, you know, our heart, our mind begins to shift. Yeah. So if having this situation, and I have the ability to discriminate virtue and non-virtue, harm and benefit, I once again lead myself into the hells by listening to the afflictions instead of listening to my wisdom. If I do that once again, then it's like I were hypnotized by a spell. Yeah, it's like somebody did abracadabra and I was in a daze and I couldn't see anything clearly. Yeah, like my mind were just totally, obscured and not able to see anything clearly. Yeah. And in that state, I shall reduce this mind to nothing, meaning my potential is going to be inaccessible to me. And my virtue that I've accumulated, I'll ignore. I'll reduce this mind, I'll reduce my heart to being, I'll become hard-hearted. I'll become completely obscured. I'll become unable to discern what is virtuous and non-virtuous. I will act just like those people who I don't respect. Yeah? And sometimes when you think about it, do I want to act just like those people I don't respect? Yeah? I mean, think of somebody whose behavior, because it's not so much the person has the Buddha nature, but think of somebody whose behavior you do not respect. And then imagine yourself going through life acting like that. And then other people reacting to you like people react to, those deeds. And what would that be like? And how would I feel with myself if I acted like that? Okay, so I shall reduce this mind-heart to nothing. And then Shantideva says, even I do not know what is causing me confusion. What is there dwelling inside me? Okay, so here it is. This is where we are very often. It's like, I've read this. Shantideva, what you say makes perfect sense to me. I really want to fight my afflictions. I really want to, be able to identify them. I don't want to follow a non-virtuous path. And then what do I do on a daily basis? I'm jealous of this person. I'm angry at that person. I make bad decisions. Yeah, I don't repay people's kindness. I blame people for what's my own problem. I have this way that I want to live, and I can't do it. Yeah. Oh, and this is terrible because, now I know in Buddhism, before when I was really ignorant, I didn't know that all this behavior was going to harm others and send me to the lower realms. Now I know that, so it's even worse, and I'm still doing the same stupid dajios. What in the world has gotten into me? Oh, that's another one my mother used to say. Yeah? I should start writing these down. I don't know, but did your mother say that? What in the world has gotten into you? Yeah? You look at what in the world has gotten into you, young lady? Did your mothers didn't call you young lady. Did they call you young man? How did they do? Yeah? What was I don't know, maybe your father was the disciplinarian. In my family, it was the mother. But, young whatever, maybe they didn't even call you young whatever. They called you, I can't say it. But it's a good question. And we're at a point where we have to ask ourselves that. What in the world has gotten into me? What was I thinking when I did that? Yeah. So you can see Shantideva is explaining his own process. So when you start thinking like this yourself, don't blame yourself for being bad. You see, Shantideva went through this same thing. And he came out the other end of it as Shantideva. And boy, I would like to be like him. Yeah. Okay. He's one of my heroes. Okay. So what is there dwelling inside me that I'm acting like? What has gotten into me? Okay. So then Shantideva starts looking and, saying, yeah, what's gotten into me, And so verse 28, he says, although enemies such as hatred and craving have neither any arms nor legs and are neither courageous nor wise, how have I, like a slave, been used for them, by them? Yeah. So here, my real enemies, not the external enemies. Yeah, because we'll come to it. External enemies cannot really harm us the same way internal enemies do. And external enemies, the most they can do is take away this life. Yeah. They can tell us to go to hell all they want, but they cannot send us there. Okay. What sends us to the lower realms? Our own afflictions. So the real enemies are these afflictions that dwell in our mind. They harm us so much more than any external enemy could ever harm us. Yeah? So enemies such as hatred, okay, anger, resentment, belligerence, okay, spite, maliciousness. There's so many varieties, that are summed up in the word hatred or anger. Okay. Yeah. And do you see them in your own mind? Yeah. Do you see even, do we see even when irritation starts? Irritation is often the beginning of it. It's like, why did they look at me that way? Yeah. Why is this object still here? For anybody who's looking for the isopropyl alcohol and the rag on top of it, I moved it into that closet because somebody left it out here for a really long time. So if you're looking for it, there it is. Okay. So it starts with, why did they leave the isopropyl alcohol and a dirty rag out here? Doesn't belong here. Okay. Okay. Do you get irritated by things like that? Yeah. If I had known who had left it, I would have put it on their seat. But I didn't know who left it there. Next time, please put your name on it, okay? When you leave things lying around, In the olden days, I could identify whose stuff was, and I just threw it out on the grass, in the field. Okay, so to see the maliciousness, the hatred, the judgment, in our mind, and really see where that takes us, and craving. And to see why, these are enemies. And why is craving an enemy? Well, I'm dissatisfied when I have craving, but when I get what I want, oh, it's so good. And I have so much self-confidence because I got what I wanted. And look how good I am. Yeah. So what's the disadvantage of craving? Yeah. Well, look how craving makes you look at the world. And look how anger makes you look at the world. It colors everything. Our whole lens that we view life through is what pleases me and what displeases me. What makes me feel good? What makes me feel bad? And what makes me feel good? I crave it. And I'm going to get it. Okay. And what's extremely interesting, and I know people don't like me always talking about politics, but I watched the thing, what's going on in the Senate yesterday. And it was such a meditation for me in terms of what craving does to the mind and how blind we are and how we don't care who we hurt in order to get what we want. We don't care about, the democracy that we've been trying to live in accord to, what they call the Great American Experiment, But, we just dismiss that. That goes out the window if we want something bad enough. I don't care the effect it has on the rest of the country, on the rest of the world. I want this, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it. And they laid it out. I mean, I had never seen it laid out this clearly before. Exactly what happened. All the steps that had been going on for months, for years, actually, beginning with the 2016 election. Remember, we were told even then it was rigged. Even then. And how that built up over 4 years, completely what they're calling the big lie, that whole people's lives got engulfed in. And now many of the people who were at, entered the Capitol, they are perplexed why they're getting arrested. As you see, they didn't wear masks. They took videos and posted it online. They had the idea that they were the big patriots, that the former president would protect them, that what they were doing is good. They had that's how much they were befuddled and tricked and deceived by one person's craving. Yeah. And how they were groomed over years that led to that. And then really seeing the effect of what happened in the Capitol. I think for many of the people that were there, seeing some of these videos that they, because they were in the Senate or in the House, and except for the people in the gallery of the House, they didn't really encounter the people who were rioting. They got whisked away to, wherever the safe places were for them. Yeah. mostly. And then they've seen some things online because it was all over the internet. But yesterday, some of the things they showed, for some of the people, they realized how close they were. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe I should stop here. People don't like me talking about this as a part of a Dharma teacher. You want me to go on? I can tell you about this afterwards if you want. Okay, I'll go on. So you made me do it. So nobody online criticized me. They made me do it. I'm not responsible. But just, so there was one video of, Chuck Schumer and his bodyguards going one direction, trying to get away from the rioters. They round a corner and then they turn back and come back immediately because the mob was coming towards them. They ran to the end of the corridor and not to the end, to the middle of the corridor. There were some doors. They went through the doors. Then the police shut the doors behind them to keep the mob from getting to them. That's how close they were. Yeah. Vice President Pence, yeah, the room that they took him to was when he was in that room, he was 100 feet away from the mob. And one door leading to that room was even closer. I forget how many feet. It was 58 feet or something. Very close. Only a wall, only a door. And those people were so angry. I mean, the videos really showed what happens when people get angry. Totally enraged. I mean, if they had gotten to Pence, they would have killed him, for sure. They were going through the halls, saying, Nancy, where are you, Nancy? I mean, they would have killed her, for sure. Yeah. There was another one of Mitt Romney, who, again, is going in one direction, going down this way. And Charles Goodman, the officer who was noted before for helping so much during the riots because he directed the people away from the Senate, he was running towards Romney and told him to go in a different direction and got him into a room where he was safe. Again, right before they were so close. That was where the 58 feet were, maybe, So that's how close. And those people were so angry, they would have killed anybody because they were mad at the whole government at that point. A lot of them were, and it came out this morning. I mean, I'm just telling you the effects of what Shantideva mentions here, hatred and craving. Okay. There was the thing this morning of one of the oath keepers, because they're being investigated for having planned this. And one of the leaders, it was a woman, remarkably. She, maybe not so remarkably, in one of the emails she wrote back in December, was, I don't know if this is true. It might be a big setup for us, but we'll wait. And if POTUS tells us to move, we'll do it because we know that it's coming from him. And then more, came out. And, what they did is they didn't have to make many arguments. They just took all the tweets that we've all been reading and linked them together and showed one tweet after the other showing, what was the motivation? What do you want people to do here? What you want people to do there? And then, 5 people got killed. 2 police officers committed suicide afterward. That one's just really is horrible to think about, 140 officers were injured, some of them with brain damage and spinal damage, and one's going to maybe lose his eye. And then the whole country going, what in the world happened? I thought a peaceful transition of power was guaranteed to us. And it's like, no, it's not. Yeah, they wanted to take over the electoral process and throw democracy out the window and appoint the person who didn't want to leave office. And you think, this is such a good example of this. And then you think, in previous lives, I've done the same thing. When my hatred and craving have been out of control, I've harmed people in a similar way. So watching this happen right now in front of me, other people doing it, this is a teaching for me about what I need to avoid, because it's so blatant. And I don't want to even do this on a small scale. Yeah. Even in the office I work in, I don't want to break people into factions. I don't want to become buddies with some people in the office because we all share the same dislike of somebody else. This happens in offices all the time, doesn't it? How do you bond together? Because you sit and gossip about how terrible somebody else is. Okay. And you realize that state of mind, that behavior, it's just in my office, but it's the same mental state that somebody who has a lot of power has, and that this is what it leads to. And I don't want to do this. Yeah. And so how fortunate I am to be able to see this now, before I've harmed so many beings, and work on this state of mind so I don't do this to other people. Yeah. And part of helping me not to do it in the future is to do purification. And who knows what I've done in the past? They say we've done everything. But, so I don't remember what I did in the past, but whenever I did anything that remotely resembled this kind of thing, I regret it. I'm making a strong determination to deal with that mind, to not do this kind of behavior again. Yeah. And then you learn from what you see around you. As painful as it is, watching those videos, it was not, it's hard. Probably some of you have seen the one of the police officer who was squashed between the doors. I'm not talking to you people because you're not online, but the people, on the other end of the camera, you've seen that. It's horrible to watch. One police officer was squished in a door frame, and he's screaming out in pain as the people in the mob are like trying to rip off his helmet and rip everything off. It was terrible, this poor man. And, and you say, this is what my afflictions make me do. Okay. And so, okay, it's the people in the mob who are doing that, but they were incited. And how tricky our afflictions are, that we can go up to the limit of, and then claim, but I didn't mean any harm. I didn't tell them to, put that police officer's head, slam it between a door frame and make him shriek. I have nothing to do with that. Yeah. This is how sneaky our mind is. We give the blame to somebody else. Yeah? So I guess I can't blame you for having me talk about, it's not politics. It's not politics, is it? It's life. It's life. Okay. So, this is, we have to ask ourselves, like, when we do our own mini little things to manipulate and create factions and turn people against each other, how can, I need to stop that. Yeah.
And how these pictures and videos and information is spread into the world. I was thinking in Germany last year there was a storm towards the Bundestag as well, but they couldn't get into the building. So how that may have set an example, how we affect each other with this kind of media culture we are living in.
Yes. Yeah.
It seems that the afflictions always has some kind of self-deception involved. And that's why they're sometimes so hard to identify, is because it's either neutral or it's virtuous. And it's amazing how convincing that they can be.
Yeah. And the trick, the key way they deceive us is, this is for your own benefit now in this life. That's one of the key ways the first big way. There's more subtler ways too as we progress along the path. But this is the first big way of, but this is good for you in this life. It'll make you happy. It'll protect you. And we self-grasping ignorance, self-centered thought.
I think it's important to share what craving does to not only yourself, but to others. One person's craving over 4 years took millions along.
Yes, exactly. And now those millions feel deceived. Yeah. And some of them, especially the people who followed QAnon, were in total shock when the inauguration actually happened, because they had been told and were convinced even that that Biden wouldn't be inaugurated, the military would take over, and then Trump would come back and be president. And they interviewed even one man the morning of the inauguration who said, I know this sounds silly, but I think that's really what's going to happen this morning, And then he, when it didn't happen, this guy and all those QAnon people were like, but this is what they told me was going to happen. This is what I believed was going to happen. Yeah. So they're having to work it out somehow. I don't know. Difficult. Yeah, difficult when you trust and then it's been broken. Okay. So that's the first line of that verse. Any other, maybe we should do question and answer? I don't know if I'll be able to even finish the verse now. Right.
One of the things that I keep thinking about too is the power of that lie. I mean, whatever sense of rage or whatever those people had, they believed something that they were told. Millions of people believed something that they were told.
Yeah.
And hundreds of people, and maybe thousands, supported the lie, knowing that it was a lie. So this too, in terms of understanding how one thing leads to another, brings in another thing, and like clouds gathering together in the negative sense. How many small things create such a huge misunderstanding and harm.
Yep.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. Because it's not just one person. It's all the people that, like you said, knew it was a lie, but because it will benefit them personally, went along with the lie. Yeah. And And it starts out small and it grows. Yeah. So when we hear in the Vinaya about monastics advising or admonishing others, this is what it's getting to. When we see somebody, one of our Dharma friends, starting to go down the slippery slope, that we say to them, hey, check up what's going on in your mind and what you're doing. And I know for myself, because like you said, our mind can be so tricky. Yeah, that if I start going down some slippery slope, I want all of you to you can start tapping me on the shoulder. You might have to slap my face, to like, okay, what in the world am I doing? And so that's how we help each other practice the Dharma. And those are real friends, the people who tell us when we're making a mistake. Yeah. The people who flatter us. It's so nice to get flattery and but we go along with it. Genuine praise is good. It's nice to know that we're able to benefit others or that people appreciate what we do. That's no reason to become arrogant, because we only are able to do that because other people taught us. Yeah. But especially when we know we're flattering to get what we want. Yeah. Or when we go along with flattery. Yeah. You want me to do something? All you have to do is tell me how wonderful I am, and I lose all my wisdom, and I will do whatever you want me to do. All you have to do is either flatter me or threaten me. Threaten something that I'm attached to, and I will capitulate and, do whatever you want. Go on.
The other side of the puzzle is that generally all of us are so gullible because we're so desperately looking for security or stability or a savior or something to make things better. And if you tell me that I'm going to make it better for you, and I don't have my wisdom in place, and then I'll follow you anywhere until. Yep. So I don't know. There's so many sides of this that of how our minds deceive us. That's a piece of it. Is the gullibility.
Right. And that pertains a lot. You talk a lot about Germany, and what happened before the Second World War, and this is same thing. Yeah.
And it says, is this collective karma, craving in my mind becomes craving in others, interconnected?
Each person creates their own mind, their own karma through their craving. But when we are together in craving and acting together, that becomes the collective karma, meaning that we will experience a result, together in some way. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, then let's dedicate. Oh, so we did 3 verses again this time. We're really moving along here.